Alright, so we're finally back onto the AEG BH25. So part of the reason why it took me so long to get to the second part here is because I actually scanned in the parts diagram and all the part numbers. And one of the things I've been working on is actually building a 3D model of the mechanical side of things. So this is actually pretty much complete, except for I didn't model the armature, commutator, or the field windings, or the switch. But pretty much everything else is complete here. So let me go ahead and just hide away some of these enclosures and we'll take a look inside. One of the things I wanted to show you guys about this, so this piece right here, the hammer, when I first took this apart I actually thought that this thing would be spinning along with this gear. But after actually connecting everything, what I found is that piece really just rides on this plane right here, and the spring is applying force. So when you finally get to that point where it can release, that's where it hits the hammer. The reason why I thought that would be spinning is because of this needle bearing right here, or thrust bearing, because you typically would put that on a piece that spins, but I guess that was their incidental spinning of this piece, but normally it doesn't spin along with the rest of the assembly. So basically this hammer will hit the bit directly, so it almost has like a jackhammer effect rather than being a hammer drill with like a ratcheting system. So basically you're getting the full force of that spring right onto the end of your bit, and there is a little bit of play in here by design that allows that bit to go back and forth. So the other thing I did is I designed a handle by using basically just some aluminum and a bike handle, and we'll get to building that, but that was the one piece that was missing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the model. I'll also put it in step format. I'll probably just put a link to a GrabCAD page for anybody who's interested in seeing this. I'll also put up these 4 images also for anybody who's interested or is doing their own rebuild of this and they need to get some information. Alright, so on to the restoration. So now what we're working on is putting the threads on this handle. So I noticed these pieces were forming a little bit of a burr right there, so we'll just hit this with a deburring tool. Alright, that looks a little bit better. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to see if we can strip off this paint, see what kind of condition these castings are in, if we're going to repaint them or try to polish them. See how we did here on paint removal. So it's definitely getting the first layer off. Looks like there might be another layer. So it kind of looks like there might be another layer of paint on there, but looking at it closer, I think that just may be the original aluminum oxide. So there's an easy way to find out if we try to polish it. If it's paint, it won't polish, and if it's aluminum oxide, then it will clean up. So yeah, you're starting to see it shines, so I think that is the aluminum surface there. So I might try to do some light wet sanding, at least to get the finer scratches out. I'm not going to go crazy because it is going to be used, so it's not going to go in a museum. So what I'll do is I'll just try to polish it up a little bit with this Blue Magic. I think that's good enough for government work. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. So back onto the main housings. I'm not going to go too wild about trying to restore this, because it still does have the original label on it. And usually if you want to go all out on these, you really have to be kind of destructive. Alright, so we're just going to use some novice tree on here. We're not going to try wet sanding this, because you'd be wet sanding for several hours just to get down to the raw plastic. You can see there, all that novice 3 really does is just dull the surface. It takes off that very top layer. It's just a very fine abrasive. Alright, we'll put some number 2 on now. Then finally we'll do some novice number 1. So we'll just hit it with some of this cleaner. Alright, so we got everything cleaned. Didn't really have to do very many repairs. The one thing I did replace is the main bearing. I didn't like how much play was in there. So this was an SKF 6004 bearing. So I just bought a new old stock FAG bearing. And you can tell the difference. Look at the size of that inner ring there. It's quite a big difference than the SKF one. So I just popped this in the freezer. I think we'll go ahead and start putting things together. So we'll start off. So we'll start basically at this end and we'll go that way. So yeah, I froze that bearing and it's going in pretty nicely. So the next thing we'll have to put in there is the gear. This piece right here has to go behind the keyway. Alright, got that on. We'll go ahead and assemble this piece. I'll just pop these 4 screws in. So the next thing we'll do, went ahead and just put that circlip on there. So that should be good. We'll install this piece. That should be pretty straightforward. So this O-ring was actually in pretty good condition, so I'm just going to keep it. That's really all that keeps this in is this piece of rubber. It's kind of acting like a spring. I did look at replacing that, but you'd have to make a custom spring really to fit that. It probably wouldn't be worth it for something like this. So to get a new O-ring for this guy. Should be the right size. We got the thrust bearing. So we'll just add a little bit of grease to this before we insert it into the shaft there. And all of these should go on. And then finally, whoops. One of the O-rings I definitely need to replace was this one. See how much flatter that is. So I guess we'll insert this guy in here. And we just have a couple of socket cap screws holding that in. So now we got this part with just this really stiff spring and this ball bearing, which I guess goes right in there. Put a little bit of grease in there just to help it. I think we're pretty much ready to mate these two together. We just basically need to fill it up with some grease. I'm not going to go too crazy on this. We'll just reuse the seal. I really didn't do anything to it. Just try to keep it exactly the same. Actually, it looks like we need to put the armature in before the seal. Because there's some socket cap screws that are going to hold that in place. So take two on the seal. Alright, so now we should be able to button it up. So, still got to put this piece on. And there's an O-ring. So next, I think we'll go ahead and install the field winding. So after cleaning it off, there was a little bit of writing on here. 110 volt 878-1. I think this is the part number 222266. So I'm not sure if that's a date code or not. 1978. All right, so I think should be about ready to throw in the armature and the gearbox. Okay. So it should just slide right in. Now we'll pop in these 6 screws. So we'll go ahead and put the brushes in. Let's see. I already popped one of them in, so we'll go ahead and pop this other one in. All right, should be ready to pop the power cord in now. All right, so we'll go ahead and build this cable up. And these just have to be long enough to get up to here. We're going to need a little bit more. So we'll cut a little bit more off. First thing we'll do is we'll add just a bit of heat shrink to the end of this. And then I think we'll go ahead and we'll make a proper cable here. I think I have enough ferrules of this size wire. We'll set the stripping length to 10 millimeters. And we'll go ahead and strip these. So this is pretty interesting wire. It actually has it has fibers inside the individual strands. I don't think I've ever seen a wire quite like this one. You typically see that outside the strands just to get its strength. So we'll have to cut that out. So this is just the existing cord. It's a pretty good cord. Just really needs to be re-terminated. So I would guess that that is about 18 gauge. So let's see if I have any 18 gauge ferrules lying around. So all you basically, so these are, if you were doing high production work, you wouldn't use something like this, but for occasional crimping, these are perfect because they never have to be calibrated. So we'll just go ahead and crimp these two ferrules. That's really all that's to it. And then we'll go ahead and put a ring lug on this guy. Okay, so I got the ring lug on. So we'll go ahead and put the cable clamp on. We'll go ahead and attach this ground wire. Okay, so I think we're ready to put the switch in. Alright, so got everything wired up, so we should be able to plug it in and we'll test it, make sure it works. So we'll just hold this cover on while we're testing it. So it looks like, yeah, one of the brushes is sparking quite a bit. So yeah, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can definitely see that's putting out some sparks. I don't remember seeing that much of a spark. I don't remember seeing that much of a spark before. So we'll take a look at the brush holder here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the brush over and see if maybe that'll help. Yeah, I think I just needed to wear that one brush back in. It may not have been, after the cleaning, may have changed the geometry of the commutator a little bit. I don't smell anything burning, so it's always good. But yeah, the brush holders are a little bit warm, so I think it just needs to be broken back in. Alright, so I think the last thing to do, so just put on the handle or the holder and the cover, and we should be good to go. So one thing I did buy is the replacement thumb screw for the depth gauge. Just a simple M5 wing nut. So we'll go ahead and pop this on. So now we can test our handle, see how well that's going to work. So it looks like I messed up. I thought that was an M5 thread there, but obviously it doesn't fit. So that must be an M6. Either that or somebody retap that. But it's just for the stop for the depth gauge. Go right in there. Yeah, so yeah, it's long enough, but it's just not quite, doesn't have the right thread on it. So yeah, you can either use this with, this is really just an extension. So you can also just take the extension off. And just put the handle straight on. And that's probably the more common way to use it. So yeah, I think it sounds good. So I think that's going to about wrap it up for this one. I do have a project in mind, a very small project. I only need to drill a couple holes, but I guess I got a box I want to put up in the basement. So I think we'll use this for that. And if there's a part 3, you'll see this in action. So I'll catch you guys next time.